Greetings, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we're back for another edition of the Astro Weather. Coming off a smoking 3-hour uh, deep dive with David last night on the astrological community and kind of what went down during COVID and a lot of the aspects that were a part of that whole experience. And just opening up the top a broader discussion, and not just including astrology but other so-called practitioners of healing arts. It was interesting. I didn't know that Abraham Hicks was pushing the shot. I saw Abraham Hicks one time, and you know what the thought that I had was when I sat down and watched this person? They're faking it. That's what my thought was. Like, she went on a rant about, I swear to God, she went on a rant about having her hotel room near the elevator, but she was talking about it from Abraham's perspective. And I just thought, this is fucking weird. Like, using, Esther's disappointment of having her hotel room near the elevator as some kind of spiritual learning experience. And I just thought, this is just kind of fucking weird. And I had been listening to the recordings, not because when I found them, a friend of mine gave a bunch to me. So I listened to them and I thought, it's mildly interesting. But I don't know, man. I wasn't feeling the channel vibe. Just wasn't feeling it. But I'll tell you who does have the channel vibe right here. Now, this is a channel. You want to see channel? Look, you know what she does? She channels crazy. She channels fucking crazy. Look at that channeling crazy face. I have been in the presence of channels, though. And like good ones. Like they're gone. And whoever's there is not who they were. This is all back in the 80s when Neptune was in Sagittarius, and I think that there was more of a propensity for that kind of activity to go on during that time, right? Like nobody's really like a South Bashar or whatever. Another one I was never really into was Cryon, right? I started reading this stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is bullshit. I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on anybody's belief system if that's right. This is just my experience. All right, here we go. See who we got. There he is, batting leadoff. Number 1 in your hearts, Michael DJ MC Sister Nino. Pedrita Pebbles, you guys are like, Pedrita batting second. Very important in baseball. Batting second is probably the most important batting position in baseball. So you're right there. Already watched it twice. Wow. It's a long show. Did you get some sleep? Liddy Lou, what's happening with you? We got some rain, man. We got some rain for the past couple days. It's been so good because there has been I think Tom brought the rain. That's what I think. I think he brought the rain with him. Tom's a rainmaker. Arlene Vega, what's happening? Double B, Barbara Boots, car in the garage for routine maintenance. So not mobile at the moment. Okay. Maybe it's time to put your legs up on the desk, put your hands behind your head, and light up a Marlboro. There you go. SJS, Extreme Machine Show. Yeah, when David and I are on, we get rolling. Jackie Delario, look at her. She's going to go get her South Beach Day, South Jersey Shore Beach Day. I hope you have a What do they call them back there? Torpedo sandwich? Go have a good torpedo sandwich. Veronica's Barn is here. There she is, the lovely and talented one, the tooth extractor. No, she's more than that. Dr. Joan S. Let's see, Amy Gill. Yeah, David and I, we got a good vibe for sure. When we're on, we're really on. There he is, my man, T. Jordan, coming to you from the living room. Kelly B's here. Sue, Southern California. You made it before the show started. Congratulations. You're definitely what's the word I'm looking for? You're setting goals today. Carly, what's happening? Soul Travel. Nora Rashid, the queen of speed. Love more, laugh more, do more. I second that. I totally second that. Meow 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 meow. Mary Lee. What's happening, Mary Lee? Good to see you. Scott Jersey, buongiorno. Good to see you, Scott. There's Janine, PMSO. You and David did good. Well, thank you. Thank you, Janine. Shirley, Lo Shiava. What's happening, Shirley? You guys going to break out those Yamaha 175s this weekend? Do a little enduro ride. Hey, those are going to be really good shit hit the fan vehicles, right? I'm actually jealous that you both have those. Catherine Kramer, Double K, she's here. Jay Schaefer, checking in from Tucson. Great show. Thanks, Jay. There she is, the lovely Maya Rose. Good morning to you. Rainbows and Butterflies. Good talk last night. Thank you. Muse Memorandum. JJ, what are you doing in Australia? I've been wanting to ask you that question. Are you visiting, or is this like your new zone? I'm gonna send you a DM on Twitter. I got to get the story from you. There's my man Ryan. What's happening, Ryan? I'm gonna throw that in there. Hit the bell notification. Yeah, I think we picked up 100 people last night. Jill Wong checking in from Mexico. Hi, Jill. Dova Haza. Hello. Mary Greether. Lou B. Hi, Lou B. UK Colin. Laura E. Great show. Thank you. It's awesome. There's a lot there. Lexi's here. Hi, Lexi. Road Trip 1981. Shirley says, I've been to 3 Abraham Hicks seminars. This was very disappointing to hear. You know, I have to say, like, when I heard those recordings, there was some stuff in those Abraham Hicks recordings that I thought was really interesting. Like, there was some really interesting, like, teachings going on. But when I saw her, I don't know, I didn't connect with her. So anyway, this is me. I have never trusted channelers. So back in the day, when Jay-Z Knight was channeling Ramtha, I was at this spiritual community in Wisconsin, and they had managed to acquire the Ramtha videos. These are the early Ramtha videos. These were the videos from Hawaii, where Ramtha was giving these talks in Hawaii. I've told this story before. Kiefer Sutherland and Julia Roberts were in the audience watching Ramtha. I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? Because I guess they were an item or something at that time. And these videos, I think there were 2 of them, maybe. They were both about 3.5 hours long. I was transfixed. I was absolutely transfixed. Not just because of whatever was, coming through Jay-Z, her present. It wasn't just her vibe, but the level of teaching and the methodology of teaching was very high level. I have to say, like, it was really something. I was getting blown away. I'm like, who the fuck is this? What is this, man? This is like some next level shit. Right. And those videos they're very proprietary. Like, you can find them, but you have to pay a lot of money for those videos. Now, I think later on, I think, you know, whatever relationship she had with Ramtha, right, probably changed. But those early videos were something. Let's see who else we have here. Sharon Lewis, Dave Sullivan, Curtis Moonflower. Love but I don't listen to trust channelers. Yeah. A lot of frauds in the channeling community. I'd agree with that by and large, right? Like, I think, that we're channeling all the time. Whether we're channeling, our conditioning or a program, or we're channeling something that's connected to um, a more elevated expression of our spirit, right? When we're really kind of in that space where we're inspired, locked in, right? I think we're, we all have a capacity to bring uh, higher thought, higher vibration, and higher information through us. We don't all have to be, 40,000-year-old warriors, or some kind of, 10th dimensional or 11th dimensional, entity from Sirius, right? Barbara Marciniak was kind of interesting. She was kind of interesting. I saw her live. It was cold as fuck when I saw her. Very cold. My Cherie Analani, what's happening? Zoracle Dax is here with us today. Double K, greetings. Let's see who else we have here. Healing Heart Rosie, LMM. Hi, Leela. Good to see you, the green-eyed crow. Elizabeth Clare Prophet was also a fraud. I told her so in front of her audience. Wow. She's a weird one, right? But her interviews with Anthony Sutton are really good. Down in the Wombat Hole, epic chat. Yeah, it was pretty epic. David was locked and loaded, ready to go. Harriet Bowie, hey, misbehaving too. Moon Sprouts. Queen Lisa, hi, Queen Lisa. Oh, we got Axel, the history kid. Getting Axel off to basketball camp. The rain has been, hey, it's been great. Good to see you. Good to see you. Moira. Hi, Moira. Enjoyed the chat. Good. Emmy Green checking in from Houston. Red geraniums. There are lots of things to do around here on the desk front. Get her done. Get her done, Barbara. Let's see who else we have here. Jill Woodworth talks. Hi, Jill. Jill's a pretty good contributor over on the Twitter side of things. Brandy Herrera, Roman. Now she's in New Orleans. Value your time. Thank you. Looking forward to more of what I have to read in the astrology. Well, you've come to the right place, because we work it out here 3 days a week and one night on Sunday. So thanks for there's my man, Steve. She was on What the Bleep. I know she was like doing the Ramtha thing. So I lived in Olympia, Washington for a while, and it was right up the road from Yelm, and that's where they have the Ramtha compound. And I used to work with a guy who was part of the Ramtha community. And, and I would ask him about it, and he was kind of tight-lipped about it, actually. His name was Tom. I really liked Tom. Tom was a good dude. But that's where Joe Dispenza comes from. Joe Dispenza comes from Ramtha land. Like, he took a lot of the Ramtha stuff and scrubbed it and turned it into like a, multi-million dollar enterprise. Let's see, who else do we have here? Jane Roberts stuff was like trippy weird, right? Like she would have like these physical like transfigurations of her face and stuff. The Seth material is pretty interesting. I would agree with that. Rob Brezhny. I got into a beef with Rob Brezhny one time. I knew Rob. I knew Rob. And because he's in the Bay Area, right? And we shared a common friend, my buddy Richard. And he published Rob's book. And he actually Rob was a student of Richard's going all the way back to college. Richard taught him in college. And, I liked his column. I thought, oh man, Rob Brezhny, this guy's like the first astrologer. I started reading him in the early 90s. And I'm like, I love the way this guy writes, man. Like he is sort of, he's like breaking the fourth wall and he's got really interesting commentary within commentary. And he's dealing with the astrological energy. I thought in a really interesting way. So I liked Rob's column, Real Astrology, from the jump. I liked it, right? And then I met him through my buddy Richard, and he was cool, and and we kind of talked a little bit, right? We would exchange emails, and then I wrote something on my website about him, and uh it was a satire piece. I wish it's still up there, but I also had graphics and everything, and it was a satire. Rob didn't like it. He didn't like it because I was being satirical. So after that, me and Rob kind of broke up. That was a long time ago. All right, let's get going. Let's come on. Enough of this. Enough of this memory lane stuff. Let's get into the astrology. All right. Here we go. By the way, thank you for being here. Do remember to hit the like, the bell, the subscribe. We have a locals page. You can join that. And you can buy me a cup of coffee if you like. And off we go. So let me zoom in a little bit. All right. There it is. So I've been talking about the Mars Pluto square. And last night, early this morning, word comes in that Hezbollah, coming from Lebanon, has fired rockets into Israel because apparently the Israelis had taken out a Hezbollah commander. This thing is just going to keep escalating. It's just going to keep escalating, right? Um, right there, Mars Pluto, and I've been talking about this Mars Pluto. So that's happening in the Middle East, even though they theoretically agreed to some kind of a ceasefire with, Hamas, right? That doesn't mean that they're not still in an outward form of aggression with other people in the area. So it's kind of a full card Monty, as Royce White used to say, right? It's kind of a bait and switch. We'll theoretically have a ceasefire here, but it doesn't mean we're going to stop. So Lebanon and now Egypt has closed airspace. So the Israelis now theoretically cannot fly over Egypt, which they could before. That's kind of a big deal, right? So now you have this area which is on one side of Israel and Egypt's on another side of Israel. So they could still fly through Jordan. I don't know if where Turkey is. They're probably going to still allow them to fly through there, but it will be interesting to see if the surrounding countries just say no. You can't fly through here. If they cordon off the airspace, it's like a fence, right? It's like an invisible fence. Now, does that mean that Israel will listen and and follow the the orders or dictates of another nation? Probably not. Well, we weren't flying. You know, you misinterpreted flying. No, what was happening was that the earth was moving beneath the planes that we had in the air. We had nothing to do with that. The earth was moving. We weren't flying. Um, so we got that, right? This is just the big story. This Mars Pluto square. Europe's on fire, and we've got submarines off the coast of Cuba, Soviet or Russian submarines off the coast of Cuba. So what we're seeing is not just the United States, right? Um, Not just that, we're seeing this amplification and escalation of violence uh, on the world stage. Now, again, you have to understand the way that astrology works is that this is lighting a fuse. So you can say, well, gee, we just have to wait until Mars gets to like 10 or 11 degrees Taurus and we'll be good. We'll be good. Get in there and they'll sextile Saturn and, you know, the grown-ups will come in and save the day. It's not really how it works because what happens here has a downstream effect and there are unintended consequences, right? You could call it the butterfly effect, or you can call it the sort of the natural order of events that would unfold when a group of people becomes aggressive or a group of people decides that we're not going to take it anymore, which is really what's happening in Europe. Finally, somebody, you know, put a methamphetamine suppository, you know, into Western Europe. Finally, like they're waking up. And so, do their votes mean anything? Perhaps not, right? But what happened as a result of their votes? Basically, Antifa and the Muslims and all the communist cells and parties who have been running Europe from behind the scenes for a while were activated. They're activated. So that's what happened. It's like, you know, the echoes of World War II, right? And David talked about this last night. And we've talked about this before with this Uranus and Taurus because Uranus and Taurus was very prominent in World War II. And, you know, what we're seeing now in Europe is this kind of reanimation. We got into this last night, right? This reanimation of this, you know, I would say transatlantic theater. And it's like you got Russia over here, who's, you know, they weren't the threat then. No, the threat then was the Germans, right? So they've kind of flipped the threat a little bit. The Russians back then were the good guys. They were helping. They were coming to save Europe from fascism. And when you have Antifa or Antifaschist, right? They come out of that period. And there they are. It's just like sea monkeys. You just add water and watch them grow. So that's a response to people in the election cycle basically saying, no, we don't want this. We want to change the direction. Now, whether or not they'll honor that change of direction, Macron wants to be Napoleon, right? David and I talked about that last night. Um, there's a chance that they won't. But what they'll do is they will unleash their street thugs, and there, of course, the weird alliance between the Muslims and the anti-fascists. So, what is the common theme? Well, the anti-fascists don't like nationalism. You know, they don't like nationalism because they think that nationalism leads to the national socialists. And I don't see anybody in Europe that even remotely appears to be a Hitlerian character, except for maybe Macron. So I'm not seeing that, but they're willing to resurrect the zeitgeist of that, and then I think that the Muslims are probably there's kind of a hardcore sect that is probably anti-Christian. So are Antifa and the quote unquote socialists or communists, because in Antifa theoretically there's different factions, right? Like some are Stalinists and some are Leninists, and those are very different things, believe it or not. So they have something in common theoretically, which is the protection of their turf and the destruction of this idea of a country and a national identity. And again, right, this is all being set in motion. And just because Mars gets to 12 degrees, it's like, no, all right, we're over that now. No, there are consequences for all of this. And when you have, like I've talked about this fixed square, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Can't do it. So can we expect more of it? Well, absolutely. Right? Like overnight, we have this missile launch into Israel, which we'll talk about over on 15 minutes. Domestically, we have the Hunter Biden show trial. And fuck, it's so fucking ridiculous. Like they get him on these fucking petty ass gun charges when there's much bigger game to be hunted in Hunter Biden land. Right? Much bigger game. What else we have here? All right, so we're clearly into the deeper square with Saturn now. And last night, this Mercury Saturn square was part of, it was the spirit of the conversation last night. We're asking questions, and what we were doing is that we were questioning the authority of people who had been vested with some sort of authority, either through their previous work or either through their aggregation of followers or through some form of David, I think, said it best, grooming. And to me, that was really enlightening. And it's like, oh yeah, I can see this. Right. So you have this old guard who grooms the young guard. And so by doing that, what do? They theoretically protect their I would say, for lack of a better term, intellectual copyright, right? Like, so their belief system or whatever their confirmation bias is that they bring into their astrological work, they're actually grooming and molding people to have that same kind of either political or metaphysical philosophy. So when there's a transition, right, there's a transition. It's like handing off the reins of power. Now, I thought that also that there was also an economic component, because older astrologers, usually what happens is, and I've seen this, I've been to an astrological conference where, there was a fairly well-known astrologer, and all these people were really, really nice. They were really nice. And I went to this conference and they're like all aging out. Right. So this is what happens. Somebody will be connected to somebody generationally and they'll follow them until a certain point. And what'll happen? Either that astrologer passes away, which that happened in that group, or they start to pass away, or there's a kind of younger message that resonates with a whole other group of younger people. So for me, I thought, well, this is also an economic move, and it keeps the older astrologers in the game. It keeps them politically relevant, right? They're not going to get canceled. That's another part that's really important. Now, maybe they're just wired that way anyway. So, what do they call it? Lock in, notch and groove. Maybe that's just how it fits. But, this is what we talked about last night, this Mercury Saturn square. And, we were looking, Saturn's authority. It's authority. And Saturn in Pisces is it's esoteric authority. It's religious authority. That's what Saturn in Pisces is all about. Like this is the high priest. And so last night we had this Mercury Saturn square, and we're asking questions about, hey, was anybody paying attention? Who was asleep at the wheel? And not only who was asleep at the wheel, but who was telling you should drive your car off the cliff? The spirit of the question is in the air today. So debate. Um, it's really interesting. Like Mercury in Gemini is fast. And when you get a Mercury Saturn square, it slows things down. Right? That's the nature of a Mercury Saturn square, which I've talked about. And in a natal chart, it's often related to learning disabilities. And the reason I know this is because I have a Mercury Saturn square in my chart. And it's interesting because I had to look at that and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have a learning disability or a speech impediment or a speech defect. Also issues with the lungs. By the way, if you do have a Mercury Saturn square, you should probably not smoke. And I went through a period of time where, like in my late 30s, I started to smoke. And I kind of stopped around 42. But I wouldn't smoke all the time. Usually when I'd go out drinking. That was the most fun. Like I just couldn't sit around and have a cigarette. And that wasn't that much fun to me. But in 2016, I think? It was either 2016 or 2017. I went to the hospital because my blood pressure was through the roof. And they did a scan on my chest and they found like a nodule or a lump in my lungs. And then they had to do like a biopsy. And they said, well, it's benign. Right. And they asked me about my personal habits. And, and I said, well, I smoke every now and then. And since that day, there was a period where I kind of was a little naughty with some friends and we'd barbecue and they'd roll Turkish cigarettes. And oh, this is organic tobacco. It's not going to hurt me. Right. But the Mercury Saturn square was interesting for me to look at in terms of like disability, learning disability. And when I was a kid, I learned to read really quickly. Like when I was in 6th grade, I took a reading test and I had like 10th grade comprehension. So I was way ahead of everybody else. But math, I was really stunted and I hated math. It just made my brain hurt. Like it was not fun for me. So I could say that there was definitely some truth to that. But I also have found that for me with the Mercury Saturn square, because this is what happens with squares, it's like sharpening your axe. So as I've gotten older, right, my mental faculties have gotten better because I use them on a frequent basis, right? That's what happens with a square. It's like you're chopping wood and carrying water every day. So this is a much bigger message than just a Mercury Saturn square. If you have a square in your chart, those squares are there to make you stronger. So don't bemoan a square in your chart. Look at it as an opportunity for you as an individual to get stronger with the square. So we have it today, and there's going to be people that are not going to like the answers that they get. They're not. Whether it's in your own life or whether it's in the press corps at the White House, the operative word for today is no. That's the operative word. No. So if somebody gives you some kind of lame ass answer or lame ass excuse or just trots out some kind of cliche that they expect you to just swallow, pump the brakes on it and say, no, can you explain that? Can you explain your position or can you tell me why this costs so much? Can you break that down for me? And it's like, well, you just have to believe me. You just have to understand that I know a lot about this. No, ask questions. Today's the day to ask questions. Today's a day where if you do some heavy lifting with your brain, you're going to learn some things. And the things that you learn will be important, right? You'll learn how to think more independently, which is really, again, gets to the kernel of what David and I were talking about last night. To think independently. And when we went in and we took a scalpel to all of it, right? What did we see? It's like, well, there's people didn't want to get canceled. People brought in their ideological, spiritual, and philosophical bias that worked for them in the 80s and the 90s and maybe the early 2000s. But here we go, full stop 2020. Then there's the kind of what I would call the corporate effect, which is, hey, if I'm, and David brought this up, you want to get the speaking gigs, but you want to be that person, you want to be on that podcast, well, you got to play the game, right? You have got to, and that's a corporate game. And none of that inspires independent thought. None of it. In fact, independent thoughts is actually penalized. It's penalized. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. Oh, you're just an angry white man, right? You're just an angry white man. I thought it was funny last night. David said, they don't even know that I'm Indonesian on my mother's side, right? Like, yeah, man. You got kind of that ethnic strain in you, brother. Like they're calling him out for being a white guy, right? It's like if they're calling him out for being a white guy, then I don't know. I must be like Himmler or something based on my genetics, right? But this is what I'm talking about. This is a bigger conversation. Like we're having it in the world, and Jason Whitlock talks about this almost every fucking night. Tucker Carlson is having these discussions. These are difficult discussions, but we have to have them. And now we've got Congress that wants to shut down this idea of having difficult conversations about foreign governments and their power and their influence in our lives, right? So I think today is going to be a hot day when it comes to rhetoric and speech. So on your end, stand your ground. Don't be afraid to stand your ground. Venus Saturn square, you will know who your friends are. You will know what your relationships of worth are all about. Moon and Virgo. We talk about the moon and Virgo. Today, it's trining Mars, right? I think you can get a lot done today. So if you're not in some form of debate with another person, put your head down and get something done. You get a lot of work done today. Virgo's industrious, right? It's like, what can I do? I kind of miss my mother in that regard. She was like 24/7 cleaner, man. I mean, I miss her for other reasons too, but she had a Virgo moon, full moon, always cleaning. The moon is squaring Uranus and Jupiter, more of a Jupiter square, right? So moon Jupiter square, and they're in this position we're talking about Mercury, Jupiter and Gemini, moon in Virgo. The one thing I would say about that is if you have phobias and fears today, you're probably going to have to face them, right? This is a phobia fear day, especially with that in conjunct with Pluto. So push through, right? Push through. It's okay. You can get through it. Face your phobia, face your fear. Take a little 5-HTP, roll up your sleeves. You'll get through it. And then you'll find the confidence to get through it. All right. Why don't we get into our True Hemp Science star of the day? Let me get the banner up. Here we go. And while I'm talking, I will also put up our True Hemp Science star of the day. I'll just have you look at them while I talk. So True Hemp Science, of course, is the only sponsor of this show besides myself, Robert Phoenix, and robertphoenix.com and my astrological services. And True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. You can get water-based, nano-emulsified, spagyrics, you name it, it's all there. The moon dust gummies are great to help you sleep, are the sleep gummies. And then there's moon dust, which is, I think, now moonlit, which is also quite impressive in terms of what it does. Chris has topicals. He's got a bunch of things there, right? All you got to do is go to truehempscience.com, check out all the product. And if you have any questions, you can always make an appointment with Chris. He'll walk you through everything. And if you type in 15MINS and you do an order of $100 or more, you will get a goodie bag. If you call Chris, tell him you came from the show. He always loves talking to people from Chattaria. So just tell him you came from the show. $150 or more gets you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. All right. Let's get into our star of the day, Mr. Chick Corea. Now, I could have done George H.W. Bush, but he's just not that inspiring. Yeah, we could talk about skull and bones, and we could talk about all kinds of shit in this chart, right? But it's like, no. Today is Jordan Peterson's birthday, by the way. I think we did him last year, so I try not to repeat the stars. So today is Chick Corea. And Chick Corea was a really well-known, accomplished jazz pianist, keyboard, and synthesizer player. And he's most known for his work with a group called Return to Forever, which also featured Stanley Clarke, Lenny White, Al Di Meola, Airto Flora Purim, Joe Farrell. But the core, the best part of Return to Forever was Chick, Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke, and Lenny White. Chick got his start really with Miles Davis. And he was part of the young lions that Miles had around him, like him and Joe Zawinul and John McLaughlin and Wayne Shorter and all these young guys, right? That would go on to become just massive influences in the world of jazz and jazz fusion. And Chick had a lot of different styles. He could perform classical music. He could perform kind of Latin based tango, jazz fusion. He had a very interesting musical style. I didn't always like Chick's style. Most of the time I did, right? But he's got his son right in the midheaven, Gemini. So one of the things that we know about him musically, he's always changing styles. He could go from like the No Mystery album with Return to Forever, which is, like it is a jazz funk fusion album. And then eventually they get to Romantic Warrior, which is this kind of very intense jazz instrumental semi-prog record. And then he could do duets with Gary Burton on vibraphone and piano, or he could go into just full on, like quartet, post bebop stuff, right? Like, so Chick could do anything. He was incredibly versatile. At times, this is just my own, I really like the guy and I like his music, but you get this with Gemini musicians. Like Prince would do this, and he would be in a track, and then he would go off somewhere in the track and kind of do something kind of weird. And it's like, okay, well, let me listen to that again. He'd always do it live. Prince would always do things because you have a really short attention span. And when you listen to Romantic Warrior, you can kind of hear that. It's like they're going down this path, and it's like, man, this is triumphal, and wow, man, I'm feeling this. And then he goes off and he does this kind of like leprechaun shit. right? And I'm like, well, what is going on here? I mean, it's not like literal leprechaun, but you can kind of hear leprechaun. And that's the Gemini in Chick Corea. Like there's this kind of, restless quality. But the thing about his son, which is fascinating, right? Because he has this T square going on. And Chick Corea was a heroin addict. Hello, Sun square Neptune, right? Neptune on the ascendant. Trudeau conjunct Neptune. He was a heroin addict in the 60s. And back in the 60s, like there weren't many places for heroin addicts to go. And we've talked about this before. There was Synanon, and then the Church of Scientology had a spinoff of the Church of Scientology for addicts. And that's where Chick went. Chick went into recovery through the Church of Scientology. And that began a lifelong relationship with Scientology. I think eventually he brought Stanley Clark into Scientology as well. I don't know if Stanley's still a Scientologist, but Chick became a lifelong Scientologist, right? So who's the head of Scientology? Well, it's L. Ron Hubbard. And where would L. Ron Hubbard's son be in Chick Corea's chart? Right there at 21 Pisces. So one could make if you believe in past lives, right? And I know that L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology place a lot of meaning in past lives and clearing your past lives, right? I mean, that's basically what they do with their audits. That Chick would have a relationship with L. Ron Hubbard from another time. I think he even composed music for Scientology. So you can see the L. Ron Hubbard connection here. It's right there. It's right. It's like right on the descendant. And Scientology saved his life because he was a heroin addict. So he has this Mars in Pisces, which I think is generally pretty creative, right? And his creativity is also augmented by Uranus and Saturn. One of the things that Chick Corea was he was prolific. If you look at his catalog, the guy would release 2 to 3 records a year. He has an amazing number of releases in his catalog. And he worked incredibly hard, right? So that's that Mars sextile to Saturn. He toured a lot. He wasn't just somebody who toiled in the studio and made records. Like with jazz, you have to tour to make money. Sextile to Uranus. So there are a lot of interesting kind of themes that Chick Corea takes on in his music. Some of them are kind of science fiction at times. Some of them go into the past, like Romantic Warrior, and he has this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And like most jazz musicians, Chick Corea was more popular in Europe than he was the United States. It wasn't like he was unpopular here, but he could go to Europe with whatever band he had, and he could sell out a 3,000 seat auditorium. In the States, he might get 500 people in a club, maybe 1,000, right? It would almost be like 3 to 1. So the ninth house and travel and touring, very kind to Chick Corea. And he's got this Aquarian moon, he's just different, right? He's a different kind of guy. He's more detached in a lot of ways. And I think that has some reflection on his music, but I also think it lends into this grand trine, which does make him in a lot of ways a creative powerhouse. Like he's got that Neptune Saturn trine, once he gets clean, like it's just head down for Chick Corea. Jupiter Saturn trine, Moon trine Jupiter, Moon trine Neptune, right? These are all highly creative aspects. Moon in the 5th house, he winds up marrying Gail Moran, who, like Gary Burton, is also a vibraphonist, right? So he marries somebody that he performs with. And there's your Venus up there in the 10th house. So he has a working relationship with Gail Moran. And he has Mercury in Cancer, and he's got that trine with Mars. And, we just talked about channeling, right? We just talked about channeling. And I think in some ways, Chick Corea would channel through his music. Like when you listen to Romantic Warrior, you could kind of hear like these, medieval themes that would come through the music, I mean, it's not like Gregorian chant or anything, but it's certainly not contemporary 20th century music, right? And I think Chick has that in a lot of his music in general. You know, he has a very intuitive feel, and his style can be extremely fluid. He could go from one genre to another inside of a tune, right? So I think this is a very interesting chart. And for me, the story is about him beating addiction with this Sun squared Neptune, Mars, Scientology plays a part. There's I didn't think L. Ron Hubbard sat down. He probably met L. Ron Hubbard, by the way, but he didn't sit down with Ron and say, "Hey, Ron, can you cure me?" Right? But he became somebody that was really important in his life. And Chick was a member of Scientology to the very day he died. Right? If you go back and you even look at some of those David Miscavige videos with Tom Cruise up there speaking, you can see Chick Corea in the front row. Musically, he's got Pluto here. So, you know, the 11th house is groups, right? So he has been in a number of different iterations of Return to Forever or Chick Corea's Electric Band or Chick Corea with Miles Davis, right? So he will go through, went through these transformational kinds of relationships as he would create and disband groups, right? And and I think that with Chiron in Pisces, I don't know the full story about Chick's life, but I would guess that he played a role in other people's lives and probably helped them get clean or probably helped them overcome some of their struggles. And these are people that he probably worked with intimately on a musical level. Um, and I would say that probably his mother was pretty significant. Again, I know I don't have the full biographical download with Chick Corea, but I would say that his mother probably played a pretty significant role in his life and laid the tracks for what would become a very profound legacy for an artist and a musician. There you go. There's your star of the day, Chick Corea. All right, come on over to 15 minutes. The link is in the description. I put it there today. Um, excuse me. We also stream live on Rumble simultaneously so that the shows wind up going somewhere and having a place to live. And if you like Rumble better, you can go over there. Some people go back and forth. I think Tom goes back and forth between the two chats. So, you don't have to stay in one place, but come join us. Good place to hang out. Good place to talk. Chick doesn't have a lot of fire in his chart, does he? He would get that from other people, right? He would get that from other people. The other thing, too, is that Miles Davis is a Gemini. So, Miles is somewhere in here, right? Somewhere between Jupiter and the sun. Like there's Miles Davis playing a very prominent role in Chick Corea's chart. All right. Take care, everybody. Have yourselves a great and blessed day. Be the absolute best version of your higher self. And we'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of the Astro Weather. Bye for now.